Good evening and salutations, my Days of Our Lives fans. So I want to start off with Xander, Kat, and Felicity. Sometimes I'm actually impressed myself with. It took me a second to sit there and remember the names, and I'm just like, I watch five soap operas. I don't know how to do it. Um, I want to start off with that scene because so the scene just starts off with just Kat and Felicity talking about some dude named Todd that Felicity likes. They're eating some sweet bits and everything, and they record Xander, right? Xander comes over to apologize and to pretty much kind of re-gift the gift that he couldn't give to his daughter. So he apologizes, right? And throughout this conversation, there's a point where he's like, listen, I do apologize or whatever. She's like, what for or whatever. And, she says like, for being an ableist. And I'm like, I don't feel like that's actually accurate. Here's the thing. If you ever worked in retail, you know that a customer will sit there and just yell at you for any sort of reason. They don't sit there and just kind of pick out like, oh, you look like you have autism, or oh, you look like you have Down syndrome. Let me sit there and like really hammer it in. So I really didn't understand where she was like, you're apologizing for being an ableist. I'm just like, no, he should just apologize for being a jackass, which is fine. But I felt like that was a bit inaccurate. Like it was like Days of Our Lives and that they're trying to do like well, see, this is the reason why you are very, you don't sit there and be disrespectful or talk down to somebody who has special needs or whatever. Sort of like little PSA, but they just went about it in kind of a forced way where it didn't land. It really didn't land. And, he apologized. It's like, listen, I was just scared or whatever. It's not an excuse, but I do apologize. And when he starts off the apology, Kat makes a comment like, "Oh, I guess it's better now. It's better late than never, or whatever." And part of me was just like, "Listen, I get that. That's your sister. You wanted him to apologize, but he could have also just been a dick and just been like, you know, just take that in a moment, like it wasn't towards you. It was towards the situation. Like I know it sounds kind of bad, but it was like he could have just been a dick and just not apologize. So maybe you should just sit there and just accept the apology without the little snooty attitude. Um, and she also didn't sit there and take the gift because, she's too old for stuffed animals and stuff. Now and Sarah and Holly, have their little girls' night out or whatever. And there's a point where Sarah's like, okay, listen, are you expecting to run into someone? Because you're wearing a certain type of perfume and everything, knowing that like she was hoping that um he ran into Tate or whatever. So, she also talks about how they're getting back together, not officially, they're just on a trial run or whatever. And this whole thing, it's just like it's messy. I mean, it's teenage love or whatever, so it is what it is. But like I feel like Tate is nothing more than a consolation prize. Like if Doug actually had his shit together and he wasn't sitting there constantly giving her the cold shoulder, um, she wouldn't even really be sitting there talking at him. And plus, she's going to college, she's doing a long, she's gonna be long distance. So she's like, I don't even know if that's really gonna work. Didn't really seem like it worked that well before. And I just feel like the whole long distance thing is just really like it's hard for most people who are committed in a relationship um to try to make a long distance relationship work. Let alone those two who they're still young, they're still something figuring out who they are and everything like that. And it's just like Ultimately, I don't really see that lasting too long. Like if they was to go in that direction, but during that point, Sarah turns around, sees Xander, and those two get to talking, right? It's pretty cordial so far, and they talk about Victoria and talk about how Victoria is missing her dad and stuff like that. And Xander's like, listen, let's sit there and kind of hash this out. Yeah, that's the same. So they go to the bistro, and then they're like, let's just sit there and try to figure out something that's gonna work for both of us because we got to sit there and try to be there for Victoria. There's a point where Sarah tells a story about how Victoria was messing up the bathroom with like toothpaste and stuff, and everything seems like it's very cordial and stuff, right? It's cordial until it gets to a point where Xander asks for, joint custody 50-50. And Sarah, even though that she didn't want to sit there and bring this up, because, they wasn't there having a good vibe and stuff, just bonding with Victoria and everything. She's like, all right, so here's the thing. I'm gonna need you to make sure that you don't do what you did before. You gotta promise me that you're not going to lose your temper and, you know, beat somebody to death like you did Philip. Now Xander wants to trust her and be like, okay, fine, I'm not gonna do it or whatever. But, she didn't lie to him. So he's still keeping his guard up and he's like, plus, he was acquitted and Philip decided not to testify. So like part of it was like, what are you talking about? I ain't want nobody's ass. Like, what are you talking about? It gets to a point he gets paranoid. He starts looking at the desk and looking at the table and everything like that. And she's like, stop it, you're making a scene. Um, Sarah's like, listen, I'm not gonna tell anyone. I just want you, if you're gonna sit there and spend time with Victoria, I need to know that you're not gonna lose your edge. I don't think you're gonna do anything to Victoria, but still, like, I need to make sure that you're not going to be losing it like that. It gets to a point where it's back and forth. The whole conversation is pretty much kind of go tits up. Xander's like, I don't know if I can trust you because you lied to me, you betrayed me and stuff like that. And Sarah's like, yeah, I did, but let's not sit there and try to act like between what I did and what you did was the worst thing in the world. So it ultimately goes nowhere. Um, Xander's back to, I'm gonna get full custody, and she walks out. Melinda walks in, and he pretty much like, nah, I need you to go scorch earth at this point. Now Melinda was talking to Sophia, checking up on her. See, Sophia had a run in with um Tate. Tate came over kind of unexpectedly. They're talking because he wants to sit there and check up on her, give her like a little glow stick since she really can't go out and watch the fireworks, like whatever. She's talking about the baby a little bit, and there's a point where he wants to sit there and touch her stomach, and she kind of freaks out a little bit because she's walking around with a stupid little fake Prego like device on and stuff. So she freaks out. She makes some sort of excuse of why he shouldn't be sitting there touching her belly and stuff. Um, And so they talk for a little bit. They wind up leaving. What he doesn't do is when he sees Holly is that he doesn't sit there and tell her about the fact that he's going like not away, but like they have some sort of seniors trip or whatever that they're doing. He didn't tell her about it. I guess he didn't want to make her feel guilty. Because she can't really leave and do anything fun for, her senior year being all pregnant and stuff. But so he doesn't tell her that. And, eventually Melinda calls and just to sit there and check on her and practically says, after this weekend or whatever, everything's gonna be in the clear. Now, if you saw the previews, took it off. If you saw the previews, this story that she tells Tate is like, what? Like it's in a lot of ways it's kind of unbelievable. Just like she's not a good liar, and I don't know if it's her, if it's the actress, but like she doesn't sound convincing. She sounds like she's telling this story fast, like she just rehearsed it and she wants to make sure it's perfect, so she's just like speeding through the story. I, I mean, Melinda was like, she was kind of worried about what she was going to tell Tate about going away. And Melinda was like, oh, you'll come up with something. So I'm like, and it was pretty much the best that she can do. And you can tell that it was just terrible. Um, Conversation with Tate and Holly didn't really go anywhere. They're just happy out there together. They're kissing during fireworks, kissing during the 4th of July fireworks and everything like that. Nothing really transpires from there. Um, Now Chad is leaving the house after talking to why I'm forgetting these people's names. Um, Julie, and goes to pick up some stuff in Sweetbits or whatever. So he gets there and he sees Felicity and Kat. And Felicity makes him some sort of excuse like, "Oh, I gave the cookies to Chanel since they had the same initials of it." She was like, "No, listen, let me just sit there and just bake you some more cookies." So she rebakes the cookies or whatever. It takes like about like an hour or something. And during that time, Kat and Chad are just they're just really bonding at this point. They're talking about her adventures of just being a skydiver, and she's not afraid of clowns and nothing too deep or whatever. But there is a point where I guess Chad's like bracelet was acting up that Charlotte made him. And so she retires it. And while she's retiring it, Kat gets a call. I don't remember what the first name is, but the last name is Smith. And he looks at that and he's like, hmm. Now, she can clearly explain that away because, she is Marlena's assistant. And, she may be sitting there taking calls about clients and stuff like that, trying to get in touch with Marlena. So it could be that. But given Kat's background as far as like lying and stuff like that, hmm, I don't know how well that's gonna go. Um, just let me see if I got a good picture. This whole thing with Melinda kind of like sticking her neck out for Sophia because she identifies with her in a sense. It just it's like I get it. They got to give the actress something to do. And part of me does sit there and think because last time I sat there and said I was like, what she's doing. That chick could probably lose a law license for this. You know, and they're not exactly in the same position. They're not. They're really not in the same position because um Melinda was alone. She didn't really have anyone to sit there and really help her out when she got pregnant and giving up the baby and stuff like that. Sophia has parents. She has Tate. She has Tate's parents. So they could help out. Whatever. Anyway, in the beginning of the episode, there's clearly somebody spying on Julie's place. And at first I'm sitting there thinking it could be like the loan sharks or whatever, but like, why would they be sitting there? Well, I guess that's possible that, Julie does actually have some money or whatever, so they could be snitty stalking the place. But it turns out when Chad comes back that they get a knock on the door and it's Gwen. And I'm just like, wait, so how long have you just been like staring at the house like a goddamn creep? Like, like what are we doing at this point? Um, I feel like that's about it, more or less. Yeah, I feel like that's about it. I mean, it was like a little offhand comment about Chad not liking classical music and stuff, but like that's eh. Y'all can sit there and check out that scene if y'all want. But that's the general gist of the episode. I might have missed some stuff here or there, but you get the idea. Now, if I miss anything, let me know in the comment section. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do a live stream tonight because it's already like 5, and I still have to finish watching General Hospital and do a review on that. Then after that, there's still 3 other soap operas that I gotta sit there and watch. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do a live stream tonight. I'm gonna try to do one tomorrow, even though I do get out a little bit later. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna go. If I missed anything, write in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video and stream, hopefully.